The night the circle of life shattered did not begin with fire or screams. It began with stillness, so deep that even the wind seemed afraid to move. The Pride lands lay under a sky stripped of stars, clouds pressing low as if the heavens themselves were bearing witness to something they could not stop. Kion stood alone at the edge of Pride Rock, his paws resting against the cold stone, his eyes fixed on the darkness stretching beyond the borders. He could feel it now, clearer than ever before. This was no longer a warning. This was no longer a challenge. This was war. Below him, the land breathed uneasily. Herds huddled closer than usual. Predators paced without hunger driving them. Birds refused to fly. Every living thing sensed the fracture. The moment where balance slipped just enough to never return to what it once was. The circle of life had always been a rhythm, unspoken yet understood. Tonight, that rhythm faltered. The lion guard gathered behind Kion without words. Fuli's movements were sharp, restless, her speed useless against a threat that could not be outrun. Besht stood like a living wall, calm on the surface but strained beneath, as if he alone were holding the land together through sheer will. Ano's eyes scanned the horizon again and again, seeing patterns that made no sense and yet formed a terrible truth. Bunga said nothing at all, his usual noise replaced by a focus so intense it bordered on fear. They had faced villains, armies, monsters, and curses. None of it felt like this. Rafika's staff struck the stone behind them, slow and deliberate. When he spoke, his voice carried no mystery, only sorrow. He told them the circle was no longer bending. It was breaking. The balance they had sworn to protect had been stretched by doubt, resentment, and unspoken pain for too long. Darkness had not attacked it. Darkness had listened to it, and now it was answering. The first sign came from the east. A roar echoed across the plains, not one of dominance or warning, but defiance. Predators surged forward, not hunting, but claiming. They spoke openly of a world where restraint had robbed them of strength, where balance had favored fear over power. The guard moved instantly, intercepting before blood was spilled, but the words alone cut deep. These were not enemies. These were voices that had always existed, now finally unleashed. From the south came panic. Prey animals flooded the grasslands in numbers never seen before, driven not by instinct, but by anger sharpened into resolve. They no longer asked for protection. They demanded change. They accused the circle of life of disguising cruelty as order. When Kion tried to speak, his words were drowned out by shouts born from generations of fear. By the time night fully claimed the sky, the Pride lands were divided not by species, but by belief. The Lion Guard raced from one conflict to another, restoring peace only for it to collapse moments later. Every intervention made things worse somewhere else. Every choice carried a cost they could not predict. Balance was no longer a shared truth. It was a battlefield. Then the darkness revealed itself. It did not rise from the ground or descend from the sky. It emerged from between them, from the arguments, from the silence after accusations, from the moments where no one listened. Its presence spread across the land like a shadow cast by thought itself. It spoke without a mouth, moved without a body, and yet its voice was unmistakable. Calm, certain, convincing. It spoke of a night long overdue, of a circle that demanded sacrifice without consent, of a balance that preserved itself by denying others the right to choose. It did not deny life, it redefined it. Strength without apology, freedom without cycles, a world where no one was bound by destiny they never agreed to. Mani, listen. Kion felt the roar stir within him, ancient and powerful, urging him to end this before it spread any further. One roar could silence the land. One roar could force order back into place. But as he looked around, he saw not enemies, but fear wearing different faces. If he used that power now, the circle might survive, but belief in it would die. The darkness sensed his hesitation and pressed harder. Visions filled the air. Predators starving in the name of restraint. Prey hunted to maintain harmony. Lives lost so the circle could remain unbroken. The truth in those visions burned worse than lies ever could. Kion's chest tightened. For the first time since becoming leader, he wondered if balance itself was unjust. The Lion Guard stood firm around him. Not perfect, not certain, but united. Best yielded those caught between sides. Fully broke, clashes apart, before claws met flesh. Ono guided the lost away from danger. Bunga fought not with rage, but with loyalty. Standing where fear told him to run, none of them spoke of destiny. They acted on choice. The night deepened, and with it came the realization that this war would not end quickly. The circle of life had not shattered in a single moment. It was cracking slowly, piece by piece, belief by belief. And the darkness was not here to destroy the Pride Lands. It was here to replace what they stood for. As the moon disappeared behind the clouds, Kion lifted his head, not in defiance, but in resolve. The darkest war had begun, not for land, not for power, but for the meaning of Balos itself. The darkness did not press forward immediately after the roar faded. It withdrew just enough to let the damage speak for itself. Silence spread across the Pride Lands, not the peaceful kind that followed harmony, but the hollow quiet that came after trust was broken. Animals avoided one another's eyes. Old paths lay empty. The circle of life, once felt rather than spoken, now existed only as an idea argued over in whispers and shouts alike. Kion walked through the land as dawn broke, every step reminding him of the moment his power had become fear. He could still feel the echo of the roar in his chest, heavy and unwelcome. Wherever he went, conversations stopped. Some bowed their heads out of habit, others turned away entirely. The Lion Guard followed close, not because they were ordered to, but because separation now felt dangerous. Unity, even fragile unity, was all they had left. Near the borders, predators gathered openly, no longer hiding their movements or justifying their hunts. They spoke of strength reclaimed, of a world where no voice restrained them. Kion listened without interrupting, realizing how long these thoughts had existed beneath the surface. The circle had not silenced them, it had only kept them contained. Now containment was gone. In the tall grass to the west, prey animals formed their own assemblies. They planned routes, defenses, escape paths. They no longer trusted protection that relied on balance rather than certainty. Vesht approached them slowly, speaking with calm sincerity, but even his kindness was met with caution. To them, balance had always felt like a promise made by others, one that demanded their fear in return. As the sun climbed higher, the darkness returned not as a presence, but as an influence woven through every discussion. It no longer needed to speak directly. Freedom without obligation. Choice without consequence. Strength without apology. Each phrase spread easily, because each carried truth sharpened just enough to wound. The Lion God attempted to restore order wherever conflict threatened to erupt, but they no longer stood on shared ground. Every action was questioned, every decision challenged. When Fuli separated a fight before it began, she was accused of protecting the old system. When Ono guided frightened animals away from danger, some claimed he was hiding them from a necessary reckoning. Even Bunga's bravery was twisted into recklessness by those looking for reasons to doubt. Kion felt the weight of every accusation, every failure. Leadership had once felt like a path he could walk, guided by those who came before him. Now that path had collapsed, leaving only uncertainty. Rafiki's words echoed in his mind again and again. Balance could not be restored by force. It had to be chosen. But how could it be chosen by those who no longer believed in it? That night, the darkness confronted him again. Not with visions, this time, but with memory. It showed him moments of peace, maintained through power. Conflicts ended through fear of the roar. It asked him whether the circle had ever truly been accepted, or merely obeyed. The question burned because it carried no malice. Only truth. Kion did not answer. He could not. The darkness did not need him to. It withdrew once more, satisfied, allowing doubt to continue its work. By the second night, divisions hardened. Groups began marking territory, claiming land not through tradition, but through presence. The Pride Lands fractured into zones of belief, each operating under its own rules. The Lion God found themselves stretched thin, forced to choose where to intervene and where to let conflict run its course. Every choice saved some and abandoned others. Fuli finally voiced what they were all thinking, that they could not be everywhere. That speed meant nothing if the land itself rejected them. Ono admitted that knowledge no longer gave clarity when truth itself was disputed. Best questioned whether protecting everyone equally was still possible when everyone demanded different outcomes. Bunga, quiet but steady, said he would stand with Kion, no matter what, even if the world turned against them. His loyalty was simple, and because of that, it hurt the most. Kion realized then that the Lion Guard itself was being tested, not by battle, but by Vili. If they continued acting as enforcers of a balance no longer agreed upon, they would become exactly what the darkness claimed they were. Yet doing nothing would allow chaos to consume everything they had sworn to protect. The turning point came near Pride Rock, where a confrontation erupted that neither side would abandon. Predators and prey faced one another openly, no fear left to restrain them. The Lion Guard arrived to a land trembling on the edge of bloodshed. Kuyan stepped forward, not as a commander, but as one voice among many. He did not speak of destiny. He did not speak of tradition. He spoke of consequence. He asked what kind of world would rise from endless conflict. Who would protect the weak when strength ruled alone? Who would show restraint when no one believed in shared responsibility? His words did not convince everyone, but they reached enough to slow the violence. Enough to create space. The darkness tried to seize that moment, whispering that hesitation was proof of failure, that uncertainty meant weakness. But this time the Lion Guard did not react. They held their ground without force, without the roar, without fear. The crowd wavered. Some stepped back. Others stood uncertain but listening. It was not victory. It was not peace. But it was something new. A pause. As night fell again, Koyan understood that the darkest war could not be won by restoring the past. The circle of life had shattered because it had been treated as unbreakable. If balance was to survive, it would have to change, not in meaning, but in how it was lived. No longer a rule enforced by power, but a choice renewed through action. The darkness retreated into the edges of thought once more, its certainty shaken, but not defeated. It knew the final decision had not yet been made. The Pride Land stood between worlds, no longer bound by the old circle, not yet united by a new one. And as Kian looked across the fractured land, he understood the truth that would define everything that followed. The final stand would not be a battle fought in a single night. It would be a moment where the Pride Lands chose what balance truly meant, and whether it was worth rebuilding at all.